Hey everyone, I wanted to give a quick introduction to one of our sample apps inside of DragonRuby Game Toolkit, specifically created for a game jam we're sponsoring called Classics Jam Gauntlet Edition. And what you're going to see here is basically a recreation of an arcade game called Gauntlet. I'll put a link in the YouTube, link to the original video in YouTube. But basically, it's a guy, he shoots bullets and he kills a spawn. These enemies come from a spawn location, and you destroy the spawn location and you win the game. So you can with DragonRuby, if you hit the tilde key, you can actually reset the game. It'll bring down this heads-up display, and you just click the reset game button, and you have the game reset to try again. So let's actually go through the code base. It's just one file, and one file about 200 lines. Every game starts with the tick method. You're given an entry point into the application, and our tick method actually invokes a function on game. So game, when a game ticks, you have the rendering, you have the creation of defaults, you've got the rendering of the output, you've got controller input from the player, and then the calculation of the simulation. So just real quick, I'm going to go through these functions just so you have a good understanding of what each one of these functions does, so that when you bring down the sample app yourself, you can play around with it and then expand on it to create your own version of Gauntlet. All right, so we have four functions: defaults, rendered, input, and calc. Defaults, it just sets default properties. We have our player position, the width and height of the player, where they attacked. I'm going to go ahead and change this property to the location of the player to 500 pixels. And if I go back to the game, you'll notice that the player is in a different location now. I'm going to shift him over a little bit after I reset the game. Notice when I reset the game, you'll see that he's back at that 500 pixel location. I'll go ahead and set it to 800 pixels, something further out, so you can see him further to the far right. And you'll notice that the player just starts on the far right. So that's where your defaults function does. Just lets you set initial starting information about the player. We'll get into what create level does later on, but let's take a look at rendering. So rendering, I render the walls, I render spawn locations, projectiles, and enemies, and I also render the player. So we can change the player's color to be indigo instead of green. So I'm going to make them an interesting little purplish color. There we go. We reset the game. We have a starting location. You'll notice that our player is a different color now. Everything is hot loaded in DragonRuby. You just edit the code and hit save, and you'll automatically see this getting updated in the game. That's what you're seeing here. So input, we only have one. We have two types of input. We have the directional, and then we have whether they've attacked or not. So attacking, after input is recorded, we go into the actual simulation of the game and process collisions and movement of the player and damage or any one of those other specific properties. So calc is broken down into four functions. We calc the player location, we calc projectiles, enemies, and spawn locations. So all those things are happening in sequence. We have tick, that's defaults, render, inputs, and then calculation being the final thing. All right, so let's play around with calculation and see if we can see what we can change with regards to the behavior of the game itself. So right here, we're calculating the player's attack location. Where you have here, where there's a small delay where the player inside of the original Gauntlet Legends, the player can't move after initially creating a shot. That's what this line of code does over here. And again, this is all details. When you start bringing down the code base, you can just play around with it and tweak numbers and see how it changes. The projectile collision is constructed in this way, and you'll notice that projectiles collide with walls, enemies, and spawn locations. So let's say, what if I wanted bullets to go through walls? Well, to do that, I would just remove walls from the things that are considered for collision, and we save that. And I'm going to reset. We go back into the game, and I'm going to position myself, go and do some shooting, and you'll notice I'm able to shoot right through walls. Right? We just removed it from the things that are considered for collision, and we have walls ignored. I'm going to go ahead and add that back, and you'll notice that I can't shoot through walls anymore. All right, so we've got a calculation of the player's inputs, the collision itself, and then enemy movement is next. So let's say I want the enemies to move much faster than they do right now. Instead of 1 pixel per animation frame, I'm going to make them move 5 pixels. So now you can see enemies are moving much, much faster. And again, I'm saving the file, refreshing. DragonRuby's automatically hot loading this stuff, right? I'm going to set that back to 1 pixel, and that gets us back to a slower, more manageable enemy movement. And after that, let's take a look at take a look at how spawn locations and maps are generated. So this is the final part of the code base. It's very little code to actually get all this working. What you're seeing on the screen right now, and we create a level based off of a level template. Well, okay, what does our level template look like? Here it is right here. We have walls. We're going to change the ordinal Y positions of our walls, maybe make it a little bit longer, and you'll notice that my wall's a little bit longer now. So I added a few more rows to this collection here, and I have a whole lot a taller wall. I'm going to remove everything except 2 items, and you'll notice that the walls are split in half now. You've got one at location 20 and one at location 27. All right, let's look at spawn locations. Let's set the spawn rate from 2 seconds to every 10 milliseconds. Now you can see how quickly the enemies spawn. We just change that back. And we can change that back to slow things down. The rest of the code here, it's the primary supporting functions to help with the logic of the game. I would recommend just getting your free copy of DragonRuby while the game jam is going on. It'll be available at classicsjam.dragonruby.org. You'll also if you go to dragonruby.itch.io, you'll find it there also, and it'll take you straight to the discount, and it also contains a link to the actual game jam itself. Again, all this is inside of the descriptions below. Hope you enjoy the game jam. Hope you enjoy your free license of DragonRuby. Be sure to stop by at the Discord at discord.dragonruby.org. There are plenty of people there to help you out and get you started with game development. This jam is 3 weeks long. You've got plenty of time to build something. You've got a starter template to help you get going. If you've always wanted to get into game development, this is the best time to do it. And you've got a community that will support you and make sure that you get something shipped. All right, well, hopefully I see y'all on the Discord channel, and y'all take care.